Jared Wicks here with the Heel to the Face podcast, and it's Wrestlemania season with the big event just around the corner from the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, this will mark the second time that New Orleans and the Superdome have hosted WrestleMania in the last 4 years. Next year, it's already been made official. WrestleMania 35 will come to you from MetLife Stadium in the New York, New Jersey area, the second time it has gone there in the last 6 years. Now, contrary to the last few years, WrestleManias 14 through WrestleManias 32 saw 19 straight WrestleManias with 19 different venues. This will obviously next year mark the second time that a venue has been repeated in the last 7 years. Now, WrestleMania is more than a single event. So a place like Bristol Motor Speedway, which might hold 190,000 people for a race, and last year hosted about 150,000 for a college football game, are normally left off of the list I'm about to include because the surrounding area just wouldn't accompany a WrestleMania. As WrestleMania is more than just a single event, it brings in Ring of Honor, NXT, Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, and all the world of professional wrestling commences on WrestleMania weekend and that city. So this is a list of the top 10 places that should host a WrestleMania that never have. Number 10, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Now, thanks to Survivor Series 97, when you think of Montreal and professional wrestling, you obviously think of Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and the infamous Screwjob. But Montreal is a great city, the second biggest city in Canada. Now, that would be great for WWE if they wanted to go international without going international. Montreal is only about 5 hours from New York City by car and only about 5 hours from Toronto by car, two major North American hubs. Montreal is a big city, obviously, to its own. Olympic Stadium holds 66,000 people, and thanks to the Montreal Expos leaving about 15 years ago, it sits mostly vacant. So, WrestleMania could be hosted at Olympic Stadium. It would have all the time in the world to get the place ready, but it's not just Olympic Stadium that is a good venue for WrestleMania weekend. But Bell Center, home of the Montreal Canadiens, could host the Hall of Fame ceremony, NXT, and the Raw and SmackDowns after. In fact, in just a few weeks' time, the WWE is planning to hold back-to-back events at the Bell Center with a Monday Night Raw and a SmackDown. Now, when it comes to everything else you need for WrestleMania, they've got it. An indoor zoo known as the Biodome, Maurice Richard Arena, which could host Ring of Honor or Shimmer Wrestling. They've got convention centers for both Access and WrestleCon. So Montreal, Quebec, Canada definitely has the size and the uniqueness to host a WrestleMania. Number 9, London, United Kingdom, England. Now, obviously, London hosted SummerSlam 1992 in front of 80,000 people, and anytime the WWE goes there, there's definitely no problem when it comes to selling out. Obviously, Wembley Stadium has changed since SummerSlam 92, so it's modern and up to date, and can still, though, hold 90,000 people if it wanted to host WrestleMania. You have the O2 Arena, which Monday Night Raw and SmackDown come to regularly. You have the Copper Box Arena, which could host other events outside of WWE, such as the New Japan Wrestling and the Ring of Honors and the Shimmer Wrestlings, as well as you have lots of convention centers and even old Olympic venues that go dormant that could host lots of wrestling events. And don't forget, there's obviously the Big Ben, London Tower, and many other attractions for people to see while they're in London for WrestleMania weekend. The reason, though, it is so low on this list is obviously because of the time difference. WrestleMania at its latest would have to start at 3 o'clock Eastern time in America and noon Pacific, and that's if it went on the air at 8 o'clock. Now, WrestleMania recently wants to go on the air at 7 o'clock Eastern time, which would provide even more complications. Probably the biggest ones, though, would be on Monday and Tuesday having to host the biggest Raws and SmackDowns of the year on tape delay, because I doubt Raw would go on the air live at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. I don't think networks would allow it, so most likely, like it does during the year when they go to England, have to be on tape delay, so it would be very difficult to not have your biggest Raw, the one full of the most surprises, be live. Number 8, St. Louis, Missouri. The 21st largest city in the country could hold WrestleMania at the Edward Jones Dome, now known as the Dome at America Center. Now, used to be home to the St. Louis Rams, the place sits dormant, so without a doubt, it would have lots of time to get ready for WrestleMania, setting up the stage and setting up the venue itself to hold the big event. But St. Louis itself could obviously bring in fans because of other reasons. Easily, the Gateway Arch is a huge attraction. There's museums. There's even the Scottrade Center, which could hold the Hall of Fame, NXT, Raw, and SmackDown afterwards. There's arenas at the St. Louis University that could host other non-WWE events. There's a convention center right at the Dome of the American Centers that could host Access, so you would not have to go far. In fact, they could host Access the day of WrestleMania, probably right up until 4 p.m., knowing fans would not have to travel from one to the other. There's the Family Arena, which is a independent arena that hosts minor league hockey and other minor league sports, and more importantly, has hosted wrestling before when Impact Wrestling actually bought Bound for Glory to St. Louis and hosted it at the Family Arena. St. Louis would bring in a lot of people all around the Midwest, from the east to the west, on to the gateway to the west, to host a WrestleMania in St. Louis. Number 7, Minneapolis, Minnesota. The brand new stadium, home of the Vikings, could easily be a home for WrestleMania. But not just US Bank Stadium's ability to hold 66,000 people, but Minneapolis is a great city for wrestling and people to converge upon. The Mall of America is an American tourist attraction, the biggest mall in the United States, with lots of stuff to do and lots of stuff to see, including an amusement park right in the mall. That would be great for fans to converge on. Maybe even a convention or wrestling show could be held at Mall of America. We saw that with the first ever edition of WCW Nitro being held at the Mall of America, right in the center of the mall. So who knows, maybe somebody would want to repeat that event and have a Ring of Honor or New Japan Wrestling right in the middle of Mall of America. You have two big arenas. You have the Target Center in downtown Minneapolis, and you have the XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. Both venues are of equal size, can fit between 16 and 18,000 people, are brand new, up-to-date arenas, so one could host Raw or one could host SmackDown, but either way, both are capable of hosting all the WWE-related events, such as the Hall of Fame at NXT that weekend. Minneapolis has convention centers and a lot to do when it comes to museums, and I think it would be a great home for WrestleMania. Number 6, Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, Charlotte, North Carolina is home to Bank of America Stadium, which houses the Minnesota Vikings. Bank of America Stadium can hold 75,000 people in the seats, but it has a lot more than just that. Charlotte, North Carolina obviously has a huge wrestling history with WCW, as the Ric Flair family knows Charlotte very well. In fact, Ashley Flair, better known in WWE as Charlotte Flair, is named after the city. Now, Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, NXT, they could be all held at the Spectrum Center, which is currently home to the NBA's Charlotte Hornets. There's the Bojangles Coliseum, which holds about 10,000 people, which could hold a Ring of Honor or other professional wrestling event. There's coliseums as well as convention centers. There's the NASCAR Hall of Fame, which is a big one because a lot of professional wrestling fans are also NASCAR fans. So the two and two could go together as a visit while you're in town for WrestleMania weekend. You even have Carowinds Amusement Park, which at last check is open during WrestleMania season. So a big theme park just outside of Charlotte could keep fans entertained as they get ready for the biggest event in sports entertainment. Number 5, Washington, D.C. Now, FedEx Field without any floor seats can hold 90,000 people, but America's capital actually has so much going on for it, I've rated it pretty high on this list. Now, there's FedEx Field, which is home to the Redskins, as I just mentioned, but there's even RFK Field, which is the old home of the Washington Redskins that is still standing to this day. It was home to DC United MLS football, but right now stands dormant. And before they tear the place down, that place could hold a WrestleMania. Now, I'm not saying it's the newest venue, but the Citrus Bowl in Orlando is also not the newest venue, and WWE did a great job in making a place that sat pretty dormant without any tenants for a long period of time look spectacular come WrestleMania Sunday. But on top of just the venues, there's the Capital One Center, which could hold all the WWE-related events. There's the Showplace Arena, the Eagle Bank Arena, and the Downtown and Gaylord Convention Centers, which could host Access as well as other conventions. The Gaylord Resorts and Convention Centers are some of the biggest in the United States, so to add another convention center on top of that one shows that there's more than enough space, and definitely in Washington, D.C., when it comes to the monuments and when it comes to the attractions, there's more than enough to do in United States Capitol for a WrestleMania fan to have a great extended weekend. Number 4, Nashville, Tennessee. Nissan Stadium in Nashville, Tennessee can hold 70,000 people. Now, the Bridgeport Arena, downtown, home of the NHL's Nashville Predators, could easily host the NXT takeovers, the Hall of Fames, Raw, SmackDowns, etc. But there's even more venues, such as the Tennessee State Fairgrounds, which is the first home of NWA TNA Nonstop Action Wrestling, where they held every single week for almost the first 2 years. Now there's the Allen Arena Fairgrounds, the Gaylord and Music City Convention Centers, which could hold Access and WrestleCon, as well as just so much to do downtown. Similar to New Orleans and Bourbon Street, Nashville's got a lot going on, and it's a kind of a city that never sleeps when it comes to live music and bars, and it's just a family-friendly but very vibrant city for many WWE and professional wrestling fans to converge upon for WrestleMania weekend. Music City and WrestleMania would go hand in hand. Number 3, San Diego, California. Now, the reason I included San Diego was for a few reasons, and why it's so high is because, well, the weather in San Diego is gorgeous. Last year, WrestleMania 33 was in Orlando, so when fans went to Orlando, Florida for WrestleMania, they would feel the same as San Diego, and that's when they're not at wrestling events, spending time at the beach, or just spending time outside in the sun. Now, San Diego is home to SDCCU Stadium, formerly known as Qualcomm Stadium, home of the NFL San Diego Chargers before they moved. So right now the city and the stadium have no NFL team. So the stadium itself sits dormant, and it might be an older stadium, but at one time, just a few years ago, was good enough to host a Super Bowl for the National Football League. Now, as I mentioned in a previous inclusion with RFK Stadium in Washington, I think WWE could do a great job in converging and changing the stadium of Qualcomm Stadium over to something that is WrestleMania caliber. But on top of that, fans could easily go to the Valley View Casino Center and the Bahamas Arena for other big events such as Ring of Honor, NXT, Raw, SmackDown, all the WWE events. They've got more than enough convention centers, and just like in Orlando, where it was a resort area where fans obviously went to Disney World or Universal Studios WrestleMania weekend, people who converge upon San Diego, California, not just can go to the beach, but they can go to the world famous San Diego Zoo, as well as SeaWorld. I think San Diego would be a great home for WrestleMania, as it was to the Super Bowl in 1995. Number 2, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Now, I wanted to rate this number 1, but the fact of the matter is, Vancouver doesn't have everything that a WrestleMania city would typically want. Now, I think it has everything when it comes to location, because it's WWE's great chance to go international without having to fully go international. World Wrestling Entertainment can do something that the Super Bowl or the Final Four cannot do, and that's literally go anywhere they want. The Super Bowl obviously has to stay within the confines of NFL-related cities, and the Final Four has to stay within United States of America. But WWE is a world company, and this would be a great chance to show that they can go international by going to Vancouver, British Columbia. Now, if they were scared that they were going into Canada and might not draw too many American fans, just know you're only about a 2.5-hour drive from Seattle, Washington, and Vancouver is only about 30 minutes from the United States border entirely. So being only 30 minutes from the American border, you would obviously have lots of fans coming over from the United States if you were worried about those who weren't going to just come from the Vancouver area by itself. But as we've learned, WrestleMania is an event that people converge upon from the whole world. I find it very funny that WrestleMania 6 and the infamous poster with Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior had snow white-capped mountains in the background, something that's actually not synonymous with Toronto, Ontario at all, but something that is synonymous with Vancouver, British Columbia. Now, Vancouver, BC has BC Place, which holds about 55,000 people. So WrestleMania would only be able to get about 65,000 people with floor seats for the event. They do have Rogers Arena, which is home to the NHL's Vancouver Canucks, which is as big a venue as any that hosts the WWE non-WrestleMania events, such as Raw, SmackDown, TakeOver, and the Hall of Fame. They do have the Pacific Coliseum, old home to the Vancouver Canucks, which could hold other non-WWE events, such as WrestleCon. They have convention centers, and they have the Abbotsford Arena as well. They do not have too much to do outside of that when it comes to amusement parks. It is a northwestern city. They do have the world famous Capiano suspension bridge, though, which is definitely something to check out. And if fans wanted to even go skiing up at Whistler Mountain or check out the Olympic Village just about 90 minutes north, they could do so. Don't forget, though, it is also, as I mentioned earlier, only about 2.5 hours from Seattle. So fans could converge upon the entire United States/Canada Pacific Northwest for WrestleMania weekend. And number 1, Tampa Bay, Florida. Now, Tampa, Florida is similar to Orlando, Florida's home last year in WrestleMania. Now, if I was to say WrestleMania had a pseudo home base, it would be New York City. But if I was to say they had a second pseudo home base, I would say Orlando, Florida. That is home to WWE's NXT territory, as well as the WWE Performance Center itself. And last year, when WrestleMania was in Orlando, they billed the event as being around the resort city of Orlando. Orlando itself is not a big city, but with Disney World, Universal Studios, and so much else to do for your family, it was a great place for WrestleMania. And Tampa Bay is similar to that. Only about 90 minutes from Orlando and only about 1 hour from Walt Disney World, many of those resorts and places could still be utilized if WrestleMania was in Tampa Bay, Florida. It's kind of funny because last year WrestleMania weekend, Ring of Honor held their Supercard of Honor 11 event at the Lakeland Center in Lakeland, Florida, which actually was closer to Tampa, about 45 minutes from Tampa, than it was to Orlando, about 50 minutes from Orlando. So easily Ring of Honor could utilize that venue again, this time actually being closer to the Tampa Bay area. Now, Raymond James Stadium would be a great place to host WrestleMania. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are synonymous with their pirate theme, and in one of their end zones has a big pirate ship where they have people let off live simulated cannons. Now, that would be great to incorporate into a WrestleMania theme. I could see a pirate theme with WrestleMania. Nothing would be better than WrestleMania in Tampa Bay, Florida. The weather would be great. It's right by the water, so people could go to Clearwater Beach, Dunedin, or any of the areas surrounding it. There's tons of baseball stadiums in case spring training was still going on. There would be so much to do when it comes to that regard. The Tampa Bay Lightning's Arena downtown could hold all the WWE-related events. The Hard Rock Casino could hold non-WWE events, as they have a big convention center within the Hard Rock Casino. There's the world-famous Tampa Zoo. There's Busch Gardens Amusement Park. There's the USF Sundome, home of the 1995 Royal Rumble, which could hold non-WWE related events. And as I mentioned, it's close to Orlando itself, so fans could actually still do all the Orlando attractions, but WrestleMania could be held itself in Tampa, Florida. So that's my list for 10 places that should host a WrestleMania that never have. If you have any suggestions of places that have never hosted a WrestleMania, or if you disagree with the list, leave a comment below or send us a tweet at Heel to the Face. This is Jared Wicks for the Heel to the Face podcast. Don't forget to listen to the podcast at Heel to the Face. You can find all the links on Twitter at Heel to the Face. For Jared Wicks, this has been a Heel to the Face podcast presentation.